Hi everyone. I assume some of you might have seen my earlier video where I had taken an Excel dataset and rebuilt a dashboard in Tableau. Um, while Tableau is definitely very fast at helping you build dashboards, that is not the real value proposition of Tableau. There are many tools out there that will help you pretty much build the same dashboard that I built in Tableau. They might be a little less intuitive, a little slower, but end of the day, if all you want to do is build a dashboard, there are many other tools that you could use. The real value proposition of Tableau is that once you've built this dashboard is when we feel the actual work begins. So let's take an example. Your manager came to you, it's Friday evening, he gave you that data set and he said, hey, I need you to give me some analysis. I need you to show me my sales trend, sales by salesperson, sales by region, top customers, transaction counts. So you went out, built this dashboard, and now you've sent it to your manager. And your manager is now in this meeting presenting this dashboard to the executive team. And guess what happens when people see a dashboard? They don't say, hey, great, thanks. You know what? Looks like the sales trend's going up, and I see who our top salesperson is. Thank you, end of meeting. No, what they do is they actually start looking at the data and start asking more questions. So, for example, this is something that could happen. As everybody's looking at it, somebody says, hey, what's this one deal we did for $7,000? That definitely seems like an outlier. Can you tell me something more about this? If you were in Excel, then you'd go off into Excel and then try to answer the question, or your manager might say, listen, let me get back to you. Can't really answer it. I got to go back to my guy who did this analysis. Instead, if you have Tableau and you're sitting in this room, you could be like, you know what? Let's see if we can figure this out. So we're going to go to the sheet which has these bins, and I'm going to now duplicate this sheet because I don't want to lose this data. And I'm going to hover over this and say keep only. And what this now does is it restricts my data just to that one data set. And I'm going to remove the count of revenue and the revenue bin and the number of records. Since I have my data set now, I want to know who sold that. So I'm going to see who the salesperson is. I want to know what product he sold. And so there's marmalade. I also want to know who he sold it to. So there's the customer. And I want to know how much revenue and how much quantity. So very quickly, what I've now figured out is Andrew Sancini sold marmalade to Company D, and he sold about 98 of them in that one order for $8,000. Now, another question I might have is, I wonder what the average deal size is. So to do that, I'm going to right click on revenue, create a calculated field in Tableau. I'm going to call it my average deal size, and the formula is sum of revenue divided by sum of quantity, and say okay. And then now I have my average deal size. Double click on that, and what you'll see is that my average deal size is about $81. I can obviously right click on that, go to my default properties, go to the number format, and say show to me in dollars. So now I've figured out that Andrew Cencini has sold marmalades to Company D for an average deal size of $81. The next question that might come up in this meeting is, how much, how many orders is this? So I'm going to go bring in the order ID. And if you look, order ID happens to be in the measures, but it actually should be a dimension since I'm not going to add up my order ID. So I'm just going to drag and drop it into dimensions. Same thing with the customer ID. And now I'm going to find the order ID and double click on that. And I can see there was one order that Andrew did, which was, and obviously it would be restricted to that one order. Now let's say I want to see all the orders that Andrew has done. So I'm going to take my revenue bin of 7,000 out of my filters, and immediately what I can see is that these are all the products that Andrew has sold. And maybe I'm not interested in all the products. So what I can do is I can go back and I can say, you know what, I want to filter this by just my product name. So I'm going to right click and actually filter this and say just show me my marmalades. So once I say okay, now I have restricted my data set just to marmalades. I'm going to take the revenue bin out again, and now I can see that every order that Andrew has done for marmalades happens to be with company D, and it's for $81. The next thing I might want to say is how much are other reps selling marmalade for. So I'm going to take out my salesperson filter, It basically is going to show me all other reps who sell this, and there are no other reps in that region who sell this. I'm going to take region out. And now I can see that Andrew is the only person who sells marmalade, and he sells it at $81. So this has been useful. And as I'm looking at this, I now have another question. I wonder what the average deal size for all my products are. So to answer that question, and as you can see, what's happening now is you're in this meeting and people are asking you questions and the next question and the next question. And instead of saying I'm going to go back and come back, I'm going to answer these questions on the fly. We call it riffing with your data. And so I'm going to start off and say, okay, let's look at my average deal size by revenue. I'm going to create a scatter plot, and Tableau automatically does that. And I want to see all my salesperson, what their average deal size is. So I can see Andrew over here sold about 67,000 with an average deal size of 37, and Nancy's over here selling that. Now, if I wanted to see this by the product category, I can now go scroll to the product name, drag it onto color. And while we don't recommend adding more than 8 items to color, just to show you an example very quickly, I can see that Andrew's marmalades happens to be one of my highest average deal size products. So I sell marmalades for about $81 a jar. And then you can see that Nancy sells coffee at about 38. And if I wanted to see if anybody else is selling coffee, I can just click on coffee and I can see Nancy happens to sell coffee, and everybody's selling coffee at pretty much the same price. So that's great. We can see that Nancy just tends to sell a lot more coffee than everybody else. If I wanted to look at boysenberry there, or I can look at chai, and obviously this is dummy data, and we can see that whoever created this dummy data did a great job of making sure that the average deal size was exactly the same. But what I can also see here is I can see the items which I don't make a lot of money. So what you're seeing with this demonstration of Tableau is that it's not just about that initial dashboard you create. What we strongly believe is the dashboard that's created is usually the beginning of your analytical journey. Once people see that data visually, then they have questions.